Hello and welcome. This tutorial is for you who has just drafted a document and that you have to present it somewhere in school or at work, and you have drafted it. It looks quite simple, but you want to make it more presentable. So this is the final version of our document with a cover page, with a table of contents, how the text looks much better, more structured and professional, and a little bit of tips and tricks in the end that will help you save a little bit of time. I hope you enjoy, and if you do, please subscribe and like the video. And let's begin. The easiest way some people think is to just space your way down to the next page and use the remaining page here as a cover page. However, it's not the most optimal way to do it because when we are going to add a table of contents later on, that page that you just created spacing your way down is going to act like an additional page, and you don't really need that. So what we're going to do is simply we go to the Insert tab here and we insert a cover page. We make sure we're in the beginning of our document and we insert a cover page. Here you have some designs that you can choose from, and you can choose whichever you like. It automatically inserts as a cover page as a first one, but it doesn't count as a page. And here you can edit it however you like. So you make the word tutorial, you can write here something as basic level tutorial. And you can double tap on the elements that you have on the cover page and change the colors and the shapes, the fillings, and whatever, and you can play a little bit with that. The next thing we have to do is to align our text to make the document look more professional. We see that by default, the alignment of the Word document is to the left, making this side look very nice. However, the right side is not as nice and not as straight, making it look messy and unprofessional. So what we have to do is we select the whole text, or we click on our Control A or Command A on the Mac, selecting the whole text, and we align the margins of the text to be straight on both sides. It's called to justify the text. Another thing we can do is to customize the margins of the document. Maybe we want to do this so we can fit more text into the document page, or maybe because we want to make less text in one page, or we even got instructions to have specific margins over document. So to do this, we go to the layout, we go to the margins, and we see that we are in the normal margins. We can choose, for example, narrow margins. This makes, for example, my whole text fit in one only page, when before it was two. We can choose moderate, wide, or we can customize our margins, making them of a different size from top, bottom, left, or right, and we can see them changing in our document. Another thing we can learn to do is to customize the spacing between lines. This is because sometimes the spacing we think is too narrow, or because we get specific instructions to have determined spacing between the lines. For this, we go back home and we see this button here with the arrows. It lets us determine what kind of spacing we want in between lines. So right now this paragraph has one as spacing. Sometimes the most common one is 115, but academic papers can often require you to have 1.5 spacing. So we can see the difference between 1.5 and, for example, 1, which is very, very narrow. So we choose whichever is more plausible for us to read. I think 1.15 is the most comfortable to look at, and that's why I'm going to select the whole document, and I'm going to choose that as my default spacing between lines. So the next thing we will learn how to do is to make a list. I already have a list here. It's a numbered list, and for the list we have several options. I'm going to go down here and we can look up here. We see that we have different types to make lists. We can use bullets. Here you can choose from a variety of bullets that you would like to use. You can also define the bullet points. You can actually use a picture as a bullet point, and you can define where it's going to be. So we can see that we can add more space. We see how it moves in the text. We can add less space, how much distance is going to be between the bullets. and the actual text in the bullet. So we define this, we choose whichever bullet we want to use, and we start making a list. Also, we can use numbers. Here we have numbered lists. Then numbers we can use our different types. We can use letters, we can use whatever. And here is the same principle. We can format this to be however we want it to be, and the spaces to be however we would like them. For this, we use this button here, and here we can define however we want our multi-level list to be. So we have our first level, they are numbers, we're in our current list, so I'm at number 2 of my list, and we can also choose the second level, we want it to be a bullet point, or we can choose whatever we want it to be here. And the third, fourth, we can define how many we would like. It already comes with the defaults, but you can choose whichever level you want to use, whatever style you want. So let's click on OK, and we're going to use it on this list, the list that we have selected. And then I'm going to continue making my list. I make a third point, and here I want to make a sub point. So I would click on Enter, and I would click on the tab on my keyboard, and that will make me go to the next level of my list. I will write, I do this, and then I want to select another sub list on this. So I would click enter and do the exact same thing. I would click on tab, and I would continue on my sub list. Also, we can choose, if you click on tab several times, you will see what bullet points will be the next one in your sub list. So my list could easily end up looking like this. If I want to go back to the next number, I'll just delete this and I will write a 4, and I will continue on my list as before. So the next thing we can do is to make a table of contents. To do this, we have to determine first what are going to be our headings for this table of contents. In that way, we show whichever are the most important points that we want to have selected on the table of contents, and it will automatically make it for us. So here we have our heading. This is the most important heading. I will put it in bold and I will put it in the middle. As well, here we have an introduction, we have what we will learn, and a conclusion. So for this, we have to select a heading. Up here, we see that right now, all this text, for example, the introduction, is a normal text. For us to make it in a table of contents, so Word automatically understands what we're going to do, we have to select it as a heading. If we select it as a heading 1, it's going to be appearing on our table of contents when we create it. So, see, we here have made a heading 1, and it already comes with default text and size. We can change this, okay? People sometimes leave it as it is, but we can change it to be how it was before. We can change the size, we can change the colors, and leave it as we would like it to be. Knowing this, we will make all our headings that we want to appear in our table of contents to be a heading 1. Now that we have all our headings selected to be headings up here, we can insert our table of contents. So we want her to appear on the beginning of our document, and we go to references, and we add a table of contents. You can choose whichever format you would like. You see here it already uses, so the heading 1, which is the heading 1 that we chose for our most important points, is the first one. If we then have some sub points we want to appear, then we would select them as heading 2, heading 3, and etc. So we choose this table of contents, and we see that it already shows us automatically what is in what place. Now that we have the table of contents, we want it to be separate on its own page. We can just space our way down to the next page, or the most efficient way to do this is to go to the layout tab here and we see breaks. So we have selected that here we want our new page to begin, and then we can just click there and we start at a new page. So now everything has moved, but as I said, don't worry, you just update your table of content and it modifies the pages automatically. The next thing we need to do to make our document look more professional is to add the page numbers, and if we need to add a header and a footer. So for this, we go to Insert and we go to Page Numbers, Headers, or Footers. To insert the page number, you just choose whatever, wherever you want to have it. If you want it at the bottom or the top, I like it at the bottom, and to the right, or you can have it in the left, in the center, wherever you would like. So now that we have it, we have no number in the cover page, as I said. We have the first, the second, and the third page in my document. To add a header or a footer, we also use the same thing. We choose whichever type of header we want to have. You can type here and we write tutorial for my part, but usually you would write your name or whatever you must on this. You double click on the document and you're back again. The same way you can do is to add a footer and a header by just double clicking on the bottom side of your document and it automatically appears. So here we also write tutorial and then we click back. Another thing we might need to do is to add footnotes because we want to clarify something. So for example, let's say here I want to add a footnote saying that this is a course for beginners in Word. What I would do is I would go to References and I would go to Insert Footnote. So we see here that one appears here, and at the bottom of the page we have our footnote, and I will write that the tutorial is for beginners in Word. So here I would have my footnote. I can add several footnotes at one page. It will just keep making my page go a little bit further up, see here, and it will try to fit as many footnotes as it can in one page. For example, we go back to the Home tab and we see that if we want to make this text bigger, we have to go here and we can write here or choose. However, if we're not sure how big we want it, we don't have to try out everything. We can use the buttons here. We see the big A is to make our text bigger. It goes from 2 and 2, and the small a is to make our text smaller. Let's say I used all caps and now I want to have one big letter at the beginning of each word. I don't have to rewrite the whole thing. I can go to the small a's here, one big and one small, and I choose if I want to have everything in lowercase or I can capitalize each word. I look at this, I probably maybe don't like it, and I go back to, for example, uppercase and have it back here. We now see that this text is in bold because we have selected it here. We can also make it italic or underline it. However, we don't have to always go to the home button and do this. We can use our keypad to do that. So to make, for example, a text bold, we can click on Control or Command in the Mac and B, and it will become bold or not bold, depending on how it was before. The same thing with the italic, we can click Control I, and we can change it from italic just by touching our keypad. The same thing with the U for underline. Another little shortcut I can show you is how to make the lists and sublists without using the buttons here. Let's say I want to make a list down here, and I would start, for example, with a numbered list. I would put a 1 and a dot and a space, and it will make me a numbered list. Let's say I want to make a bullet point list. I would draw a star and a space, and I will have my bullet point list. If I want to make a line list, I would draw a line and a space and it will make me a list. Let's say I don't like where these lists are located on the document. Maybe I want them further closer to the margin or further out. So what I will do is I will put the mouse at the beginning of the word on the list I want to move, and on my keypad I would press the arrow to the left, and then with my mouse I would hold in the left click on the mouse, and I can move the bullet points around. I can move my list around, so I can put it here, or I can take it and put it closer to the margin. Let's say, for example, that I want to make sublists. So I start a list here, and when I get to the third one here, I want to add some other point. So what I would do is I would delete the next number just once, and let's say I want to make a bullet point, I would make a star and a space, and it will make me a sub list on the 3. I would continue to write, and I want to make the next point. Under the last thing I wrote on the last bullet point, I would delete the bullet point and make a line and a space. And I would write the next thing that I want. Let's say that now I want to go back to continue the numbered list. I would delete the line, and the next number in line is a 4, and I would write the 4 and a dot and a space, and I will be back on continue making my list as before. I really hope you find this video useful and that it has given you some tricks and tips that you can use later on to make your documents look good. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to see more tutorials like this, and I wish you a nice day forward.